Tiana Roberts believed the greatest love of her life was already buried. She had survived the loss, built a life around it, and learned how to keep going without looking back. What she didn't know was that somewhere in the quiet aftermath of that tragedy, a stranger had made a promise in her name, one that would change both of them forever. Tiana Roberts had a system. Wake up. Don't look at the left side of the bed. Make 1 cup of coffee. Not 2. Drive to work. Listen to the radio, not silence, because silence had a way of pulling things back up. Come home. Eat something. Sleep. Do it again. She was good at it now. Tiana worked as a grief counselor. If you asked her colleagues, they'd tell you she was the best one there. Not because she said the right things, though she did. Not because she had textbook training, though that too. But because when a widow sat across from her and said, "I don't know how to do this," Tiana didn't flinch. She didn't offer false hope or worse, fake sympathy. She simply said, "Neither did I. Sit down. We'll figure it out together." And they believed her. Because they could see it. She wasn't reading from a script. She had lived this exact sentence. Every single word of it. His name was Evan. Evan Roberts. Her husband. Gone 14 months now. Not a dramatic exit. Not something she saw coming. Evan had gone to pick up a contract from across town. Something for work. Something ordinary. Tiana had kissed him at the door, told him to grab milk on the way back. He'd laughed and said, "Woman, you and this milk." She smiled every time she remembered that. Even now. He never came back. The other car ran a red light. Evan didn't stand a chance. But the man in the other car, the one who walked away with a broken arm and a shattered windshield, survived because Evan swerved, took the full impact on his side so the other driver wouldn't be hit head-on. Evan saved that man's life. And it cost him his own. Tiana found out at 4:17 in the afternoon. She remembers the time because she was looking at the clock when her phone rang. She remembers the exact way the officer's voice sounded. Not cold, not warm, just careful. Like he was handling something breakable. She didn't cry. Not then. She stood in her kitchen holding the phone long after the call ended, staring at the spot where Evan had kissed her that morning, and she felt something inside her chest simply close. Like a door shutting. Quietly. Permanently. The crying came later. In private. In places where no one could see, because Tiana had a rule. And even grief had to follow it. Don't fall apart where people can watch. She never learned the other man's name. Didn't want to. Didn't ask. Knowing his name would make him real. And if he was real, she'd have to feel something about him. And she didn't have the energy for that. Not on top of everything else. So she let it go. Buried it. Moved on the way grief counselors tell other people to move on. One day at a time. One breath at a time. Or tried to. His name was Caleb Donovan. 42. Self-made. The kind of wealth that doesn't announce itself. No flashy cars at every corner. No name on every building downtown. Just quiet influence. The kind where people in certain rooms go still when he walks in. Not because he demands it, but because they know what he's capable of. He ran a private investment firm. Small team. High returns. A reputation built over 15 years of being right about things other people dismissed. But none of that is where this story starts. This story starts in a hospital on a Tuesday night, with a broken arm and a guilt, so heavy Caleb thought it might actually crush him. The accident had nearly ended him too. Not physically. Well, yes, physically. Broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, a gash along his forehead that needed 14 stitches. But the real damage was something else. Something that happened in the seconds after the crash, when he was conscious, and the other man, Evan, was not. Caleb remembered everything. He remembered the sound. That specific, horrible sound a car makes when it absorbs an impact it was never designed to take. He remembered looking across and seeing Evan slumped, blood on the side of his face, and understanding, in a way that went beyond thought, that this man had done something extraordinary. Evan had seen the collision coming, had turned his wheel, not away from it, toward it, put his own body between the crash and Caleb's side of the car. A stranger did that for a stranger? Caleb spent 4 days in the hospital. Evan spent 1 in the morgue. On the 3rd night, when the ward was quiet and the painkillers had worn off enough for him to think clearly, Caleb asked a nurse about the other driver, the one who didn't make it. The nurse hesitated. Then, he has a wife. Young. They found her number in his phone. Does she know? Someone called her already. Caleb lay there for a long time after that, staring at the ceiling, thinking about a woman he'd never met, whose husband had just died saving his life. He didn't sleep that night. When he was discharged, Caleb did something he had never done before in his life. He made a promise. Not out loud. Not to anyone in the room. Just to himself, in the back of the car taking him home, with his arm in a cast and his ribs screaming every time he breathed. I will take care of her. Not out of guilt. Or, not only out of guilt. There was something else underneath it. Something that felt less like obligation and more like purpose. Like maybe this was the thing he was supposed to do with all the years Evan couldn't have. So he started. It began the same week he got home. Caleb hired a private investigator. Not to stalk. Not to intrude. Just to understand. What did she need? Where were the gaps? What was slipping through? The report came back fast. Tiana Roberts. Age 33. Grief counselor. Renting a 2-bedroom apartment she could barely afford. Car needed work. Engine issues. No family nearby. Caleb read it once, then closed the folder and started making calls. He moved quickly and quietly, set up shell accounts, routed payments through layers no one would ever trace back to him. Her rent. Covered. The landlord received payment from an anonymous community assistance fund. All other bills also disappeared before it ever reached her. Small things. Invisible things. Caleb told himself it was enough. Unconsciously, all the time he heard reports about her and fixed one thing or the other anonymously. His mind made imprints. Like a routine, his brain ticks, even though he wouldn't admit or couldn't figure out why. 3 months after the accident, he went to see her. Not to introduce himself. Not to say a word. He simply showed up at the grief center where she worked. Sat in the waiting area for 30 minutes, pretending to read a magazine, and watched her through the glass of her office door. She was with a client. A woman. Young, shaking, clearly destroyed by whatever she'd lost. And Tiana was leaning forward, not with pity, but with something fiercer. Something that said, I see you. I know exactly where you are. And you're going to survive this. Caleb watched her for 30 minutes. When she glanced toward the waiting area, just once, briefly, he was already gone. But he didn't leave the parking lot for another 20 minutes. He sat in his car and stared at the building and thought, what is happening to me? He told himself it was still about the promise. Still about Evan. Still about making sure she was okay. But the truth. The real truth. The one he wasn't ready to say out loud. Was that something had started shifting the moment he saw her through that glass door? Something that had nothing to do with guilt and everything to do with the way she is. Quiet. Grounded. Like she'd already survived the worst thing imaginable and come out the other side still standing. Caleb had never met anyone like her, and he couldn't stop thinking about her. It happened on a Wednesday evening. Tiana's car broke down on the road between her office and home. The engine seized completely. She called a tow truck, then sat on the curb and waited, scrolling through her phone, looking tired but not panicked. The way someone looks when inconvenience has become just another thing on the list. Caleb drove past her. He knew her car, had seen it before, more than once, more than a few times. He knew exactly what it looked like, where it usually was, what route she took home. He told himself later it was a coincidence, that he happened to be on that road, that he hadn't been driving past her office on the way back from a meeting that didn't exist. He was lying to himself, and he knew it. But he pulled over anyway. "Your engine?" he asked, getting out. She looked up, evaluated him the way people do when a stranger approaches at dusk. Quick, careful, reading him in seconds. "Yeah," she said. "Tow truck's on the way." "How long?" 40 minutes. Maybe more. He stood there, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual, trying to look like a man who had just randomly stopped for a stranger, and not like a man who had been circling her life for months without her knowing. "I can take you home," he said. "If you want." She studied him again, longer this time. "I don't even know you," she said. "Caleb." A pause. "Tiana," she said. And something happened when she said her own name. Something in the air between them shifted, like the space recognized something the two of them hadn't figured out yet. She got in the car. The drive was quiet, not uncomfortable. The kind of quiet that exists between two people who are both used to being alone with their thoughts. Tiana gave directions. Caleb followed them. The radio played something low, and neither of them changed it. When he pulled up to her building, she thanked him, opened the door, paused. "Thank you, Caleb," she said. And the way she said his name, slow, like she was figuring out how it felt in her mouth, did something to him he wasn't prepared for. She went inside. Caleb sat in that car for 15 minutes before he drove away. He saw her again 2 days later. At the coffee shop, the one near her office where she went every morning. He knew her order. Medium, 2 sugars, oat milk. Had known it for months. But this time he walked in and stood beside her at the counter like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'll get hers," he told the barista. Tiana turned, recognized him. And this time, something close to a real smile crossed her face. Not polite. Not practiced. Genuine. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said. "I want to." After that, they kept running into each other. Each time felt accidental. Each time, Caleb knew it wasn't. But Tiana, sharp as she was, didn't seem to mind. If anything, she started looking for him. Not obviously. But Caleb could feel it. The way her eyes moved when she walked into a room. The slight shift in her posture when she spotted him. She was starting to enjoy this. And so was he. More than he'd enjoyed anything in years. The first real date happened because of a rainy Thursday. Tiana was standing outside the coffee shop, jacket pulled tight, staring at the sky like it had personally offended her. Caleb was across the street. He watched her for a moment. The way the water caught in her hair, the way she shook her head at the rain like arguing with it might work. And something in his chest went warm in a way he hadn't felt in longer than he could remember. He crossed the street. "This is getting ridiculous," he said, stopping in front of her. She looked at him, eyebrow raised. "The rain?" "Us," he said. "Running into each other every 2 days and pretending it's chance." She didn't look away, didn't flinch. "Who said I was pretending?" she said. Caleb felt the corner of his mouth pull up before he could stop it. Dinner was everything. Not because of the food, though it was good, but because of them. The way conversation flowed without effort. The way Tiana laughed. Really laughed, head back, completely unguarded. And Caleb felt like he'd just been handed something rare. She told him about her work. Not the heavy cases. Just the texture of it. He told her about his business. Kept it surface. Numbers, deals, the dry architecture of making money. But when she asked him what he actually enjoyed about it, he paused, thought about it, and said, solving problems other people gave up on. Tiana tilted her head, studied him. That's not what most billionaires say, she said. Most billionaires are full of it, Caleb said. She laughed again, and Caleb thought, I would do a lot of things to hear that sound again. After dinner, he walked her to his car. The rain had stopped. The street was wet and quiet and empty, in that way cities sometimes get at 10 p.m. on a weekday. Like the world had stepped back to give them room. They stood by the car. Neither moved to get in. I had a really good time, Tiana said. And she meant it. Caleb could hear it in the way she said it. No performance. No obligation. Just the truth. Me too, he said. A beat of silence. The comfortable kind. The kind where two people are both thinking the same thing, but neither wants to be the one to move first. Tiana broke it. So, she said, are we doing this? Doing what? This, she said, gesturing between them. Whatever this is. Caleb looked at her. At the way the streetlight caught the side of her face. At the way she was looking at him. Open, a little vulnerable, completely real. Yeah, he said. I think we are. They kissed for the first time 3 nights later. They were at his apartment. She'd come over to watch a movie. A reason to be in the same space. A reason to stay. The movie played. Neither of them watched it. They were on the couch. Close. Closer than they needed to be. At some point, she said something about the movie, and she turned to look at him. He turned at the same time, and suddenly they were inches apart. Neither of them moved. Tiana's eyes dropped to his mouth. Just for a second. Just long enough. Caleb, she said. Quietly. He closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first. Gentle. The kind of kiss that's less about passion and more about finally. About two people who have been circling each other finally landing. Then Tiana's hand came up to the side of his face. Fingers against his jaw. And she pulled him closer. And the kiss changed. It became something deeper. Something that had been building for weeks. Maybe longer. Something that felt less like a beginning and more like an answer to a question neither of them had been brave enough to ask out loud. When they pulled apart, Tiana's forehead rested against his. Her eyes were closed. Her breath was uneven. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Caleb said. And neither of them moved for a long time. For 3 weeks, it was everything. Caleb and Tiana fell into each other the way two people do when the walls have been down long enough. Fast, deep, and with a kind of certainty that surprised them both. He learned things about her that no file could have told him, and she learned things about him too. Most importantly, she learned that he remembered everything she ever told him. Every single thing. That one should have been her first clue. It was a Sunday when it started to crack. They were at his apartment. Caleb was in the living room on a call he took in the other room, so she wouldn't hear. She wasn't snooping. She was just looking for a pen. The drawer she opened was his desk. The one in the corner of the study she hadn't been in before, and inside, on top, was a manila folder. A thick one, with her name on the tab. Tiana Roberts. She stared at it. Then she opened it. Inside was everything. Photos. her apartment building, her car, her office, her daily schedule mapped out in someone's careful handwriting. Bank records. Not hers. Shell company records. Payment confirmations. Her landlord's name. Her mechanic's name. Dates going back months. All of it connected to him. Tiana closed the folder, set it back exactly where she found it, poured herself a cup of coffee, drank it standing at the counter, hands wrapped around the mug, and felt something inside her chest that she hadn't felt since the day she learned Evan was gone. Betrayal. She didn't say anything that day, or the next. She went through the motions, smiled when he smiled, kissed him goodnight when she left. But something had changed. Something he could feel but couldn't name. A slight distance in her eyes when she looked at him. A hesitation before she touched him. Like she was reassessing everything she thought she knew. On Tuesday night, she confronted him. Not gently. Not with tears or trembling voice or any of the soft ways people deliver hard truths. She was standing in his living room when he walked in from work. Arms crossed. Back straight. The posture of a woman who had spent the last 2 days rehearsing exactly what she was going to say, and was done waiting to say it. I found the folder, she said. Caleb went still. The one with my name on it. The photos. The shell companies. The payments to my landlord, my mechanic, all of it. She watched his face. Watched him process what she was saying. Watched him decide in real time whether to lie or not. He didn't lie. Tiana. Don't, she said. Sharply. Don't say my name like that right now. Not like I'm something fragile. I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. Right now. So he did. He told her about the accident. About Evan. About waking up in a hospital bed and knowing a man had died so he could live. About the promise he made. About the investigation, the payments, the months of watching from a distance. He told her all of it. And when he finished, the room was so quiet Tiana could hear the clock on the wall. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at him, long and hard, and with something in her expression that cut deeper than any words could have, and said, "So I was a project." "No." "A redemption project," she continued, like he hadn't spoken. "You felt guilty about killing me husband, so you decided to fix me. Pay my bills. Make sure poor little Tiana was taken care of. And then what? You got bored with doing it from a distance, so you decided to actually meet me? Date me, Caleb? Was I supposed to just fall into your arms and be grateful?" Her voice was steady, controlled, but underneath it, something was shaking. "Because that's what it feels like," she said. "Like I was your way of making yourself feel better about surviving." Caleb didn't defend himself, didn't interrupt, didn't try to explain it away or soften it or reframe it into something more palatable. He just stood there and took it, because she deserved to say it. All of it. Every word. When she finished, the silence stretched between them like something physical. "You're right," he said. "It started as guilt. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. A man died because of me. Not because he chose to, not because it was his fault. Because I was in that car. And I couldn't live with that. So I found a way to do something about it." He paused, swallowed. "But here's what you need to understand. The guilt kept me paying your bills. It kept me making sure you were safe. But it didn't make me fall in love with you." Tiana's jaw tightened. Barely. But he saw it. "You want to know what did?" Caleb continued. "Watching you sit across from a woman who was falling apart and not flinch. Watching you laugh at a bad movie like it was the funniest thing you'd ever seen. The way you always reach for my hand without even thinking about it. Like it was the most natural thing in the world." His voice dropped. That wasn't guilt, Tiana. That was me. The real me. Falling for the real you. And I have never been more terrified of anything in my life than I was that night on the couch. Because I knew that if you found out the truth, you might never look at me the way you looked at me when I kissed you. Tiana stood there for a long time. Her arms were still crossed. Her face was still guarded. But something behind her eyes had shifted. Something small. Something she was fighting against. Something that wanted to believe him. Then it was gone. "I don't believe you," she said. And without another word, she left. She took 5 days. 5 days of silence. No calls. No texts. No showing up at his door or his office or anywhere. Caleb didn't reach out. Didn't drive past her apartment. Didn't check with anyone. He sat with it. The worst silence of his life. And waited. On the 5th day, Tiana drove to the cemetery. Not for Caleb. Not because of anything he said or did. She went because Evan was the only person who had ever made sense of the mess inside her head. And right now, her head was the messiest it had been since the day she lost him. She parked. Walked the familiar path. Knew exactly which turn to take, which row, which headstone. She'd been here enough times that her feet carried her without thinking. She had flowers. White lilies. His favorite. She saw him before she got there. A man. Standing at Evan's grave. Tiana stopped walking. Her first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. Who would be here? Who else knew this grave well enough to stand in front of it like that quietly? Still, like he belonged. Then she got closer. Close enough to see the back of his jacket. The way he was standing. Not casually, not like a visitor passing through. He was planted. Like he'd been there a while. Like he wasn't in any rush to leave. And then he turned. Caleb. They looked at each other across the grass. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Tiana's grip on the lilies tightened. Her jaw set. Every ounce of fury she'd been carrying for 5 days surged up through her chest like a wave, and she almost turned around. Almost walked back to her car and drove away, and never looked at him again. But she didn't, because Evan was right there. Right between them. And she wasn't about to disrespect this place. Not for anyone. She kept walking. When she reached the grave, Caleb stepped to the side. Gave her room. Not much. Just enough. She set the lilies down. Carefully. The way she always did. Stood there. Didn't look at Caleb. The silence between them was not the comfortable kind. It was thick. Loaded. The kind of silence that has years of unspoken things pressing against it from both sides. "Why are you here?" Tiana asked. Her voice was flat. Not cold exactly. Emptied out. Like she'd wrung herself dry, and this was what was left. Caleb didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. "I come here sometimes," he said. "Not often. But sometimes." Tiana turned to look at him then. Really look. And what she saw on his face stopped her. He wasn't performing. He was just standing there, at the grave of the man whose death he carried, looking at the headstone the way someone looks at something they can never make right, no matter how hard they try. "Since when?" she asked. "Since about a month after I got out of the hospital," Caleb said. "I needed to see where he was. I needed to. I don't know. Be here. Stand in this exact spot and understand what I owe." "You don't owe him anything," Tiana said. And she meant it. Surprised herself with how much she meant it. He made a choice. In a split second, he made a choice. That wasn't your debt to carry. "Maybe not," Caleb said. "But I carry it anyway." Another silence. I came here to talk to him, she said. About you. Caleb didn't respond. I've been sitting in my apartment is going back and forth, Tiana continued. Part of me wants to never see you again. Part of me wants to scream at you until my throat gives out. And another part. She stopped, pressed her lips together, swallowed. Another part of me keeps replaying the way you looked at me that night on the couch. When you kissed me. And I can't reconcile that with the man who had a file on me in his desk drawer. Caleb turned to face her fully. I know, he said. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's okay. It's not. What I did, the way I did it, was wrong. I know that. I knew it while I was doing it. He paused. But I need you to hear something. And I need you to hear it here. In this place. Because this is where it all started. Tiana looked at him, waiting. The first time I came here, Caleb said, I stood right where you're standing. And I looked at his name, and I thought about what kind of man does what he did. Turns his wheel toward the crash instead of away from it. Gives his life for a stranger without a single second to think about it. His voice cracked. Just slightly. Just enough for Tiana to hear it. And I thought, the woman who loved a man like that. Who built a life with him. Who wakes up every morning and carries him with her. Caleb stopped. Took a breath. She must be extraordinary. Tiana's chest tightened. She didn't speak. That's when it started, Caleb said. Not guilt. Not obligation. Something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. But it was here. It started here. At this grave. Because of him. He looked at the headstone. Evan didn't just save my life that night, Caleb said. He led me to you. The words hung in the air between them. Tiana stared at him. And for the first time in 5 days, something behind her eyes broke open. Not anger, not hurt, but something softer. Something she'd been holding back because letting it through would mean letting him back in. She wasn't ready to let him all the way back. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. But she wasn't going to shut the door either. 4 days. 4 days of nothing. No call. No text. No sign that Tiana Roberts even remembered he existed. Caleb checked his phone every hour. Then every 30 minutes. Then he stopped checking and just held it in his hand, staring at the screen like it owed him something. It didn't. She owed him nothing. He knew that. After everything. The folder, the confession, the grave. She owed him exactly nothing. And yet the silence was the loudest thing he had ever heard in his life. By the second night, he couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every version of what she might be feeling. Angry. Disgusted. Done. Every possibility landed like a punch, and none of them landed softer than the last. By the third night, he stopped trying. On the fourth night, Caleb did something he hadn't done in years. He drank. Not casually. Not a glass of whiskey before bed the way some men unwind. He sat alone in his apartment with a bottle of bourbon and poured glass after glass and watched the amber liquid disappear and felt absolutely nothing get better. The alcohol didn't numb it. It made it louder. Every memory. Every moment with her. The way she laughed. The way she said his name. The way she had kissed him on that couch like he was the only thing in the world worth kissing. And then the other memory. The way she looked at him when she found the folder. That exact expression. The one that said, I trusted you. And you didn't deserve it. That one stayed. No matter how much he drank. That one stayed. He doesn't remember the exact moment he decided to drive. Doesn't remember getting into the car, or putting in the address, or navigating the streets. What he remembers is standing at her door. His knuckles an inch from the wood, the hallway spinning slightly. the taste of bourbon still burning in his throat. And the thought, clear, sharp, cutting through every haze the alcohol had built. She might not open this door. He knocked anyway. Tiana opened it in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. Hair pulled back. No makeup. The kind of face that meant she'd been home all day and hadn't planned on seeing anyone. She looked at him. Really looked. At the unsteady way he was standing. The red in his eyes. The way his jacket was hanging off one shoulder like he'd thrown it on without thinking. The smell of bourbon coming off him in waves. "I can't do this," he said. His voice was rough. Thick. Not just from the drinking. From something deeper. Something that had been sitting in his chest for days, pressing against his ribs, waiting for the right crack to spill through. "I can't sit in that apartment and wait for you to decide what I am to you. I can't do it, Tiana." He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth, steadied himself against the doorframe. "I have tried. God, I have tried to be the kind of man who gives you space, who waits quietly, who lets you take as long as you need." His jaw tightened. "But I can't breathe without you. I haven't been able to breathe since you walked out of my life. And I know I don't have the right to stand here and say that to you after everything I did. I know that." He looked at her. His eyes were glassy. Not from tears. From the alcohol. From the exhaustion. From 4 days of barely eating, barely sleeping, barely functioning. "But I'm saying it anyway. Because it's the truth. And you deserve the truth. Even when it's ugly. Even when it makes me look like exactly the kind of man you think I am." Tiana didn't move. Caleb swallowed. Hard. "I can't live without you." He said it the way you say something when you've been holding it in too long. Not dramatically. Just out. Broken open. Like it had been bleeding inside him for days and he had finally stopped trying to hold the wound shut. "I have spent my entire life being in control. Every deal. I have never, not once, lost control of anything that mattered." His voice cracked. "And then there was you. And I lost control of everything. And instead of fighting it, instead of fixing it the way I fix everything else." He stopped, closed his eyes for a second. I fell so hard, Tiana, that I don't even recognize who I was before you. That man. The one who sat in boardrooms and made decisions worth millions. He didn't feel anything. Not really. Not the way I feel when you look at me. Not the way I feel right now, standing here, knowing that I might have already lost the only thing in my life that ever actually meant something. His hand came up, covered his face. Not crying. Holding himself together. "I know what I did was wrong," he said, muffled behind his hand. "I know the folder. The watching. All of it. I know how it looks. I know what it made you feel." He dropped his hand, looked at her again. "But I need you to hear me when I say this. What I feel for you has nothing to do with guilt. Nothing to do with Evan. Nothing to do with some debt I owe." He took a breath, unsteady. "You are the reason I get up in the morning. You are the reason I want to be better. You are the only person who has ever made me feel like I am worth something beyond what I can do or buy or build." His voice dropped to almost nothing. "And if you send me away tonight, if you tell me this is over, I will respect that. I will disappear. I will never bother you again." A pause. "But I will spend the rest of my life knowing that I had the greatest thing that ever happened to me." And I let it go. Tiana looked at him for a long time. Then she stepped forward, not to push him away, not to send him home. She took his arm, gently, steadied him the way you steady someone who is about to fall, and guided him inside. "Come in," she said. She sat him on her couch, took his jacket off, carefully, the way you undress someone who is too far gone to do it themselves. Set it across the back of a chair. Went to the kitchen. Came back with water. A tall glass. Put it in his hand and closed his fingers around it. Drink, she said. He drank. The whole glass without stopping. She took it, refilled it, handed it back. Again, she said. He drank again. She sat beside him. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to be there. And they stayed like that until his hands stopped shaking. Until his eyes could focus again and the room stopped tilting. At some point, his head dropped. Not all the way. Just enough that it came to rest against the back of the couch, tilted slightly toward her. His breathing evened out. Slowed. Deepened. He was asleep. Tiana watched him for a while. The way his face looked when he wasn't holding anything back. Younger. Softer. Every wall he spent his waking life building. Completely gone. She got up. Went to her bedroom. Came back with a blanket. Laid it over him. Carefully. Without waking him. Then she sat back down beside him. Close this time. Close enough that her shoulder touched his arm. And she stayed there for the rest of the night. Caleb woke up to sunlight and a headache so sharp it felt like someone had driven something through his skull. He blinked. Tried to focus. Looked around. Tiana's apartment. Her couch. A blanket over him he definitely hadn't put there himself. He sat up slowly. Every movement made his head pound harder. And then it hit him. Everything he said last night. Every word. Every raw, unfiltered, completely unplanned confession that had poured out of him in her hallway, while he could barely stand straight. Oh, God. He found her in the kitchen, standing at the counter with a mug of coffee, looking out the window at nothing in particular. She looked rested, calm, like she had slept perfectly, even though something told him she hadn't slept at all. She heard him come in, turned slightly. "Morning," she said. Tiana Caleb started. "Sit down," she said. Not sharply, just firmly. He sat. She poured him coffee. Black. Set it in front of him without a word. "Drink first," she said. "Talk after." He wrapped both hands around the mug and stared into it and tried to find the words for what came next. When the mug was half empty, he set it down, looked up at her. "I'm sorry," he said. He meant it. Not just for last night. For all of it. The folder. The lies. The months of watching from a distance. "I'm sorry," he said again. Quieter. For showing up drunk at your door. For putting that on you. For making you take care of me when you have every reason in the world to... Stop. He stopped. Tiana set her mug down. Walked over to where he was sitting. And before he could say another word, before he could apologize again, or explain, or brace himself for whatever was coming next, she sat down beside him, leaned in, and pulled him close. She wrapped her arms around him and held him against her, the way you hold someone when you want them to feel safe, when you want them to know, without conditions, without an explanation, that you are not letting go. Caleb went completely still. Then something inside him gave way. Not loudly, not with drama or spectacle. Quietly, the way ice cracks deep in winter, a single sound. Barely there, that means something solid has finally surrendered. He wrapped his arms around her, held on, pressed his face into her shoulder, and breathed her in and felt, for the first time in weeks, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. They stayed like that for a long time. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. When they finally pulled apart, Tiana's hand came up to his face, cupped his jaw, tilted his chin up so he had no choice but to look at her. Her eyes were clear, steady, decided. The way they looked when she had already made up her mind about something, and the rest of the world could catch up whenever it was ready. "I'm not going anywhere, Caleb," she said. He looked at her. Finally, he could have what his heart wanted the most: to be with her. They got married on a Saturday in October. Not a grand affair. Not the kind of wedding that fills magazines or trends on social media overnight. Tiana didn't want that. And Caleb, who could have given her anything in the world, understood without her having to explain why. This was theirs. Just theirs. Tiana wore a simple gown. Fitted. Elegant. Hair down. No veil. And she carried white lilies. Not for tradition. For Evan. A quiet nod to the man who loved her first. No one but Tiana knew what the lilies meant. But Caleb, who had stood at that grave, who had seen those same white lilies placed against the headstone month after month, understood exactly why she was holding them. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Tiana Roberts was his, and he was hers. And nothing, not guilt, not secrets, would ever change that. This was where their story ended, and where the rest of their life began.